Joining me to discuss his 2024 Republican presidential bid is former Cranston, Rhode Island Mayor Steve Laffey. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining me here today.
Great to be with you, Michael.
The Federal Reserve raised interest rates by another quarter percentage point. What's your reaction?
Well, they're far behind the times. They have been for years. They kept rates too long and caused the inflation themselves. It's been my opinion that all members of the Federal Reserve who have been around since 2020, when they started the inflation, should resign. And I think it's one of my major policies that the Federal Reserve has helped destroy the middle class and create a far greater disparity of wealth, and it needs to stop. For people who don't know, the Federal Reserve, created a long time ago, was giving a dual mandate, and that meant they had two jobs that can't be done. For anybody who's taken Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, you would know that you can't solve two equations with three unknowns. Neither can the Federal Reserve keep unemployment low and inflation at zero. And now it's been running at 8%, and now, of course, it's come down, mostly because the money supply has declined, something that people don't watch anymore. But yes, whether they raise it the last or again, they've been behind the curve. They are still behind the curve. They took well over a year to raise rates. They were a year late to do so. They're terrible. It's a terrible organization designed to help enrich rich people and keep middle-class people struggling.
We're going to get to your middle-class message in a little bit, but I want to go off of that. Last month, the labor market added approximately 209,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate actually decreased a little bit to 3.6%. Some people see those numbers, and they're saying the economy is on the right track.
Yeah, well, 80% of Americans think the economy is on the wrong track. In the history of my lifetime, and I think before, that has never happened. In other words, Reagan's president, there's a recession, 60% say we're going the wrong direction. We're having good economic growth, 60% right direction. Today, with 3.6, 3.7, extremely low unemployment rates, we have nearly 80% of the people of America say we're going in the wrong direction. And they know why. Because we hosed and destroyed the future of America by spending too much money, destroying the value of Social Security, what the Federal Reserve did. We could go on all day about it, but everybody knows, and it's been happening for a long time. But the economy is not doing well. We've had 15 straight months of the leading economic indicators go negative. We have the yield curve is the most inverted since it's been since 1980 something. These things are usually just before a recession. And I don't want to spend the time on economic data. We can talk about, this is what I know. And so
you're the financial expert, right?
We're about to fall off a cliff. And for people, and we go into the banks when you want to, but for people who thought the banks are in the rear view mirror as far as the problems, that was just the interest rate risk. That's just the risk by some bizarro banks. And again, the Fed failed. They took in a lot of money and bought 30-year treasuries with it. And when 30-year treasuries changed dramatically, they were out of business. We have yet to see the deposit risk, like in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, with it trying to take the money out of the bank. And we've yet to see what happened in 2008, the credit risk. All three are now going to happen at once. That's why I need to be president, because I don't think other people running for president either know what I'm saying or know what to do about it.
So it sounds like you think the economy is going to get worse before it gets better.
It's going to get a lot worse. And we need a financial expert to run the country. That would be me, in order to help fix this so it doesn't happen again.
So you mentioned the middle class, and your campaign centers on, quote, restoring the middle class. How exactly will you do so as president?
Yes. One step backward. The middle class is created by policies. It doesn't organically just exist. It came out after 1945. People listening, parents would know about this, the GI Bill, et cetera, et cetera. The cycle of death started with the public schools starting to go down. It started in 62, accelerated in 77 to the point where public schools can't be fixed. The recent test scores for 8th graders in civics, 13% of the kids are proficient. 20% are proficient in history. The worst math and reading scores. That means when you see a 23-year-old who can't make change, the next 10 years will be worse. Okay? So then you have the Federal Reserve. And then you have what's happened with China and manufacturing jobs. So to reverse the cycle, we've got to do several things. One, we've got to stop trading with communist China, bring manufacturing jobs back to America. By the way, It's starting to happen anyway because globalization is going away. We could talk about that for a long time. We won't. Social Security is the biggest line item disaster in our budget. It's a $65 trillion unfunded liability, which means, Michael, you're not going to get it. But Michael, even if you were 40, you're not going to go get it. So we have to modernize it so that young people get it. That will help the middle class be certain of what they're going to get in retirement. Right now, they know they're getting nothing. So if you're certain what Social Security will bring 10 years from now, you're much more likely to buy a home. And then you've got to take what the Federal Reserve, which I've talked about, we've got to get the Federal Reserve to do one thing, keep inflation at zero. So again, when people know that inflation is going to be zero for the next 10, 12 years, they're much more likely to buy a home, to move into the middle class. The last thing that we can talk about, there's many, many more, is we've got to get people out of poverty. Right now, there are high marginal tax rates on people in poverty trying to get into the lower middle class. They can't do it. They won't do it. They get Social Security disability. They get $600 a month. They go get a job for $10,000. They're still in poverty. Social Security Administration wants $5,000 of the $10,000. They're in a 15% tax bracket. They make $1 extra, they lose their housing allowance. They're in a 1,000% marginal tax bracket. These things need to be changed dramatically for the middle class to make a comeback. And that's what I plan to do.
You spent a large chunk of that answer talking about Social Security, and your platform, a big part of it centers on fixing Social Security. Of course, many refer to it as the third rail of politics. You want to go into it. Specifically, you want to implement a personal security system.
Yes.
What does that entail? Why is it better than the current system?
It's better because when I was in college, Michael, I wrote a paper in 1983 to date myself about the lousy returns of Social Security. So the plan is simply this. There's a lot more at stevelaffey.com. Hit the button that says issues. But number one, people who are retired get what we told them. Someone who's 40, he's already in the old program, we'll call it. He gets whatever that letter says he's going to get when he's 62 or 67. But then he joins a new program. You, Michael, get a lot more money. And people who are listening to the show or watching this who are very young, you're going to get a lot more because we're going to put you in a new program. And the program is going to look like this. You own it, but you can't touch it. We invested in a worldwide basket of stocks and bonds, New Zealand real estate, German whatever, the S&P 500, all with one giant computer. No Charles Schwab. And a recession or a depression comes, you don't take it out. You die at 40, you keep it. By the way, for all the ladies listening, you get to be married in Social Security today. You turn 30, you get married. The husband goes to work making 140. The wife has 4 kids in 4 years. The husband divorced the wife today in the old system. The wife gets nothing in Social Security. We don't do that. You get married, we put in half and half. And if you get divorced, unfortunately, you take the half of what everybody put in, the couple put in. So there's a lot of things like that, but think about it. What 40-year period would you not get more? The answer is none in American history. You could get 5 times more. You could get 7 times more. I don't know what you're going to get. But what happens in this system is that the old people die and the young people come along and the system goes from being $65 trillion in the red with, by the way, if we go the rate we're going, people who are 40 listening to this, you'll get the $2,000 a month they say you're going to get in that letter. It'll just be $200 a month with the inflation they have to run to get you the $2,000.
So I just want to make sure. So under your plan, nobody will receive cuts to their Social Security benefit.
That's right. That's the plan. And it's not even my plan. It's the world-renowned leader in Social Security, Larry Kotlikoff at Boston University, a close personal friend of mine, someone who's in my movie Fixing America. But that's the plan. And the plan costs more at the beginning. By the way, fixing things costs more at the beginning. But then what happens is older people die. They got exactly what we told them. Everybody in the plan who got a letter from the Social Security gets exactly what they were told. People under 62 join the new plan. Now, could somebody under the age of 62 get less? Yes. Someone who's 53 only has 7, 9, 10 years in the new system, right? Could everything go down over that period of time? It could. So we got to tell people the truth. But here's my part. If we don't do this with the $200 trillion of unfunded liabilities we have, if we don't take on the biggest problem first, then we're doing something very bad for young people. Now, my opponents, from Donald Trump all the way on down, basically say don't touch it. I find that financially immoral. It's not what I'm running on. What I'm running on is that I'm a financial expert. We're going to fix it, and we're going to especially fix it for the younger people who have been destroyed by what has happened recently in our country.
Would you support means testing Social Security?
No,
Why not?
I think you put it in and you keep it. You put your money in. Now, the old system, you put it in, we're not going to means test it. You're going to get exactly what we told you. And the new system, you're going to get your investments back. By the way, when you get older, we start slowly but surely at the age of 60, whatever actually gets past 62, we start buying 10% a year or 15% a year annuities, basically either through treasury and adjusted notes or bonds or whatever it might be. But when you finally turn 72, you no longer really own it. You're all in a group of 72-year-olds, let's say, or 70-year-olds, whatever it ends up being. And then you get a check for what you put in every month until you die. And that's how you don't have to worry about it. And that's how the unfunded liability goes down to zero. And that's how the dollar starts to remain strong. Because if we don't do this kind of stuff, the dollar is going to be weak, really weak. And we're going to have more inflation.
Because some opponents of that will say people who own a lot of wealth, who have a lot of money, they don't need their Social Security check. They're fine as it is. That will save money in the long run. It sounds like you disagree.
I disagree. I disagree with taking money from people who put in and paid the price to put in just because they were more successful, whatever they did. I disagree with taking away more of their money after they put it in. I've always disagreed. I've been very consistent. I've also disagreed with cutting Social Security for people who are already in the system. But if I'm not president, that's actually going to happen. Within 10 years, people in Social Security, if nothing else happens, will see their check cut by up to 30%. That's what's going to happen if I'm not president.
Now, you mentioned some of your GOP challengers there, namely former President Donald Trump. The current GOP field has over 12 declared candidates. You have those who are appealing to the Trump base. You have those trying to gain the attention of the so-called anti-Trump voter. Where would you place yourself in the current primary field?
I think I would define it a little bit differently. There's Trump and the Trump sycophants and the mini Trumps, and they're going nowhere. They've gone nowhere. Ron DeSantis starts at 32, goes to 17, lays off employees. Done. Chris Christie comes into the race. He's a sycophant. He loved Donald Trump. When Donald Trump and the tapes came out in 2016, when Donald Trump says the way to get a woman is to grab her by the private parts, he said, "Oh, Trump's a good guy." Trump's not a good guy. He's a complete narcissist. But Chris Christie's known by the entire free world, and he's at 2%. He doesn't even know how to attack Donald Trump. So you have a list of Ramaswamy, who's at 8%. He loves Donald Trump. He sent a letter to every candidate saying, you have to agree to pardon Donald Trump when in your first day in office. This is craziness. I am in the camp of, I know how to fix America. I'm the most qualified person running, not the most qualified person who lives in America, the most qualified person running with a wide experience of putting the right people in the right place at the right time. So I didn't grow up being a never Trumper per se, although I've said recently with the last indictment, there's one about to come. It's hard to keep track of his indictments, obviously, right? But the one where he took secret documents from the White House and brought them to Florida and New Jersey, I've said he should go to jail. He will go to jail for a long time, and he should get out of the race now. Now that I'm the only person saying that. Asa Hutchinson, very nice man, it seems, doesn't quite know what to say. Chris Christie has things where he walks around, a walking, talking guy.
Well, Hutchinson has said that the former president should not be in the race, that he should step down.
Yes, he shouldn't. He didn't say he should be in jail.
You believe he should?
I believe he will go to jail for a long time. I believe he's clearly guilty. And the big lie that goes on in America that people absorb too much of information seem to believe is that a president of the United States can simply, as Trump says, by thinking it, can declassify top nuclear secrets and top secrets of our country. That is nowhere in the law. That's a lie. He cannot bring him to Florida, and he can't, if you read all the articles against him, he certainly can't keep him in a bathroom like in Article 10 and watch 150 of his employees wander around the bathroom where secrets are. He can't do that. And he can't obstruct justice, number one, when they ask him for the documents back. But a narcissist doesn't know this. And a person who lived Donald Trump's life, who got away with it in New York, doesn't know it. But I think he will go to jail and should go to jail for a long time.
Now let's talk about your prior political experience. You served as mayor of Cranston from 2003 to 2007. During your tenure, what would you say was your biggest regret?
My biggest regret was not getting a hold of the fire union contract because I left after 4 years to run for the US Senate. I know people won't even understand what I'm saying, but the fire union in Cranston runs a lot of stuff in Rhode Island. I got a hold of the other contracts. We set the city right, and we can ask about that. But my biggest regret is probably that that contract outlasted me before I could get a hold of it, because you don't want to know the whole thing about the fire union in Rhode Island, but it's a really bad situation.
You can go into it.
Okay, so the fire union in Cranston, um, we did a study at the very beginning of Cranston. We went around the nation with the world-renowned researchers, and they came back and said to me, Mayor Laffey, we've never seen this. You have 202 firemen. You only need 100. Your union contract says you can't lay any of them off, okay? And here's the other thing they said. Mayor, we've been around the country. We've never seen a fire department of any size even close to this that's all white. There's no females. In fact, they told me, we don't think there's a Jew. There's 202 white, Irish, and Italian Catholics on your fire department. I tried to change that, and I failed. That's a regret. I tried to get liberal groups to sue Cranston so I could enter into an agreement to put minorities as the next 6 fire people, a woman, whatever. And I failed, and I regret that.
What would you say was your biggest accomplishment?
Turning the city around rapidly. The city of Cranston was the lowest bond rating in the United States of America and had 37 days or so until it went bankrupt. And I mean, missed payroll. And we resurrected that city quickly. In fact, you are talking to the only elected official in American history at a mayor level, at a governor level, who had the bond rating of the city go up 8 notches in 3.5 years. Never been done before. And that's because I'm a financial expert. And remember, I ran for mayor, not being home for 20 years, 18 to 38 roughly. And I said to everybody when I ran, you're not going to like anything I'm going to do. Vote for me, Steve Laffey, because I didn't come back home to live in Detroit. I will fix it. You won't like it. Vote for me. And maybe the only time in American history that was a winning message.
Well, now you've exited politics for nearly 10 years, and now you're trying to make a gamble for the biggest office in the country.
Yeah. But remember, being mayor is a small part of my resume. I'm a public school kid. I've got 6 kids. I know more about education than anybody else. I've educated in private school, Montessori school, blah, blah, blah. And I personally homeschooled the last 3, and the results are in. My youngest child is the youngest admittee at Colorado State University history. I have graduate degrees for the ones who have graduated. I mean, they do very well. So I know a lot about education, and I also taught the top finance course at the University of Rhode Island. I know a lot about higher education. I know a lot about healthcare. I have a daughter with stage 4 cancer for over 8 years. I've seen over $5 million of bills cross my desk. I know what people go through, and I have a lot of empathy for what's going on in healthcare. We can go in how to fix that. But I also, by the way, am a financial expert. I went to Harvard Business School at the age of 22. I was a direct admit. I was at Payne Weber, and I helped run the largest domiciled investment banking firm in the South. I was the president and chief operating officer, ran the venture capital operations, ran the trading desk, all that kind of stuff, and was directly responsible for the sale of the firm for $785 million in 2001. So I have a large background in a lot of things that America needs, not just being mayor, but my real gift that we need too, is that I really have a background of putting the right people in the right place at the right time. And in fact, if you go, and I hate to dare people to do this, I know people do, but I don't think you can find an article of any, but by the way, a lot of people don't like me. I'm just saying union people in Rhode Island, which you called, they say they hate me. But you don't find the article where it was like, I would have done this differently than Laffey did in the private sector or as mayor. There's not an article like that. I know what I'm doing. I get to the core of problems. I hang on till I get what I want, and I change people's votes. That's what's missing from politics today. Changing others' votes. People don't even talk about it. I do it.
You mentioned having to pay millions of dollars to support your daughter's medical bills. What would be, is that something you're okay with? Is that
Well,
something you seek to
I have
change?
insurance, so I didn't pay them, but I've seen them. And I've been down to these children's hospitals, because we lived in Philadelphia for a long time. The reason you haven't heard from me, so I was planning on running for governor of Colorado, but I had to go live in Philadelphia to help save my daughter's life with my family at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia from Colorado. So, and that, by the way, that girl graduated from BU grad school after crawling her way back to CSU one class at a time prior to the pandemic, and got married and still has cancer. So yes, I know a lot about healthcare and I know a lot of what has to happen, because people go broke over healthcare in this country, and we need to stop that.
What has to happen?
Number one, you look at what Germany pays for prescription drugs, it's $497 a person. Let's say it's $500 a person in their country. We spend $1,000. Why? The big drug companies use America as a cash cow. That's going to end. We are not going to pay more than Germany for prescription drugs. Now, maybe they're going to go to 700 and we're going to go down to 700. We can save a lot of money that way. Two, we don't try to get people better. We just push drugs, because the big drug companies, which in 2006, which I was against in 2006, started being able to advertise on TV. And if you notice what they advertise about, by the way, it's some esoteric drug, some esoteric disease that you don't even know what it is, but it causes people to walk into doctor's office and say, I think I need that pill. I think I need this test. And what we do is we give people pills and give them tests. We don't pay people for results. We need to stop paying people, doctors, hospitals, for getting people better, not for giving them drugs. Third, we have a situation with our patent laws where drug companies are able to extend patents nearly forever by providing a new use. We need to stop that. If you invent a drug, we want you to get profits. We want you to have 9 years, 10 years, or whatever we decide upon. And after that day, it goes generic. That will change drug prices in our country. So the fourth thing, obesity. Again, third rail issue. 40% of cancers in our country are started by obesity. 40% of our healthcare costs are obesity. We spend 18% of our gross domestic product on healthcare. Switzerland spends 12. Take 0.06, the 6% differential, and multiply by over $20 trillion in our economy, and you'll find that we're wasting 1.2 or over $1 trillion. So these are some of the ways to get at it. I'm not trying to make fun of people who are obese. I'm just telling you, a president, one, shouldn't be obese, and two, should be espousing what John F. Kennedy did, people being healthy. You're too young to remember this, Michael, but there was the Presidential Physical Fitness Award that he started in 1960. I participated in it when I went to public schools in like 67, 68, and that needs to come back. It really doesn't exist anymore. We need to get people healthier, Michael, and that will lower our healthcare costs.
I want to go back to your second point. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You were saying that doctors weren't paid enough for diagnosing people. Can you go back? I was confused by that. What do you mean by that?
Doctors don't get paid to get people better, do they? If you go see a doctor right now, and do they get paid when they say, oh, a patient came in, had high blood pressure because they were really overweight. We worked with them over like a year period, got their weight down, took them off Lipitor, which they didn't need to be on, and look at them. They're much healthier. And actuarially, we took a patient that came in with high blood pressure, or what's happening in America with a disaster with diabetes among young people due to obesity. We took that person down, so it no longer is a $300,000 a year problem, in a sense, what it would cost us if they had a heart attack. It's now a $200,000 problem. The doctor kept 10 grand of it, let's say. I'm making the numbers up, but we don't have a system like that, do we? No. The doctor says, hey, you got high blood pressure. Here's some Lipitor, or whatever drug whatever they call the drug today, right? You got high cholesterol, I should say, is Lipitor. You have high cholesterol. They don't try to change the cholesterol. They don't try to do anything. Doctors don't get paid to do that. In fact, they oftentimes get sued when they try to do that. So we need to change the system so that people are paid. I got paid in the private sector when we made money. It's not about making money. It's about getting people better. And how do we make people better? Do we just give them tests and then say, here's some pills? No. We are wasting a lot of money.
You may be the only candidate I've spoken with who seems to allude to that more money for doctors is part of the solution.
Not necessarily more money for doctors. I'm not saying more money. I'm saying they get paid when they make people better.
So like a lawyer gets paid when their individual that they're representing wins a suit, or like a real estate agent gets paid when they sell a house.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of like that. I mean, it's called capitation. In other words, a hospital will take on these patients, and actuarial, we kind of know what they're, and I don't want to say worth. Everybody's worth an infinite amount of money under God. I'm just saying what they could cost this year. So you take a guy who comes in drinking a gallon of beer every day, weighing 400 pounds, 40 years old, 5'9". He's a real expense. I come in, I'm $3,000 a year probably. My father lived to be 90. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I weigh less than when I graduated from college. I work out every day. I have nothing in. So think about it. What do we really want health insurance for, Michael? Bad luck or bad genes? When Michael gets hit by a truck, we want to make sure he gets health care.
Hopefully never.
And I hope you don't get hit by a truck. But when someone's family has breast cancer a lot more than another family, we want to pay for it. We're not going to say, oh, your family was born with these Tay-Sachs, which is a Jewish disease where people really suffer, and it's very expensive. We want to pay for that. We want to help people, whether due to bad genes or bad luck or whatever happens to them. But we have to say to the 40-year-old guy, hey, listen, Tommy, you weigh 400 pounds. We're not going to give you 2 brand new knees in 3 years. Let's get our act together. We're going to take time. We're going to work with you, and we're going to get your weight down to 250. That would take that person from again, I'm making the numbers up, but on a scale of an actuarial problem of $400,000 a year to $100,000 a year. That's where the big money is. Go to the problem, Michael. It's in obesity. Go to the problem. It's in drug prices. Go to the problem. It's in our patent system. Let's go to the problem and fix it.
Now, education, which you've also talked about, is on a lot of voters' minds following the recent midterms. It is my understanding that you want to remove the public school system from existence, that you want to get all children out of public schools. Many families will say that public schooling benefited their children. So why remove the system entirely?
The system is broken. I just gave you some statistics. Let me recite them again for the parents who might think that they just watched a rerun of Little House on the Prairie and their school is fine. Okay? Because it's not. Let me remind people that if they think they missed the last 10 years of PTA meetings, Parent Teacher Association meetings that happened when I was a kid, they didn't miss them. They never had them. The unions took over your school system. So it is a problem. People tend to think that their congressman is good and every other congressman stinks. They tend to think, in New Hampshire particularly, that their school system is okay, the rest of the world is bad. What I'm telling you is that when the internet came around, things should have started changing already. We can do a lot of stuff for free, but you take a city like Denver, $23,000 a kid. We could put them in a Catholic school for $7,000. They could get a check to do homeschooling. They could get a check to make their own choices of where they want to go. Now, as president, I don't have that power. I have the power to eliminate the Department of Education, which I would do. But we have to have someone as a leader saying, hey, you know what? This isn't working. Like I just said, 13% of the kids in 8th grade today, right now, are proficient in civics. Proficient in civics, Michael, means you get a question like, do we have a monarchy in America or do we have a constitutional republic? And they don't know the answer. Remember this other thing, Michael. If 13% of the kids are proficient, there are school systems where the numbers are near zero. In order to get an average of 13%, New Canaan, Connecticut, probably very rich area, probably has very high scores. You've got to get to Memphis, Tennessee. So all this stuff means that when you look at property taxes and property tax bills, listen, I'm a mayor, I know this. I sued every member of the school committee in Cranston personally when they didn't balance the budget. I picked up textbooks in Cranston, Rhode Island that were 30 years old because they didn't spend any new money on textbooks. We've got to get parents to understand. This is leadership, Michael. Leadership is in 2005, me saying, and then making a movie and running a campaign on, we can't trade with China anymore. There'll never be a democracy. When everybody said, what are you talking about, Steve? We trade more with them, there'll be a democracy. That's what Clinton said. That's what Bush said. That's what my opponent said. I said, you're wrong. I was right. And I'm right about this. I'm right about it because I've got 6 kids. I've dealt with school committees. And for example, take calculus. Just take calculus as a subject. Do we not know that there's a great calculus teacher that could teach it online to like 1 million kids? We do know that. Why does the federal election, our federal election people, why does the government not have Algebra 1 on their website today for someone in 8th grade where they miss a lesson to watch it? Why not? It'd be free. See, the course level can come down dramatically and the scores can go up dramatically. Look at all the results are out. Charter schools do better.
What would you say though to the parent who enjoys their school system, who thinks their child is benefiting from it?
No, their local school may never close. My point is not that. As president, I'm going to be a cheerleader. I'm not going to be a governor or the mayor. I'm going to be the cheerleader to make people understand by what I'm telling you. That's what, by the way, I believe this has to happen because the world has changed dramatically. I mean, think about it. When you go and look at all the administrators in public schools, or, by the way, here's the thing that people assume that they shouldn't assume or they shouldn't take for granted. I do radio shows up here in Northern Colorado. And it comes back, hey, such and such town is going to vote whether to put back in policemen in their schools. What do you think, Steve Laffey? I'm like, what do I think? Did you just skip over the part? Why are there policemen in the schools? Did something go so radically wrong? What? You're not questioning that policemen are in schools? And why would you have kids in schools where policemen are walking around? I mean, what went wrong? Then you look at the test scores. Even in New Hampshire, when I go there, they think everything's okay. Their test scores are terrible, given their GDP per capita of the state. So why wouldn't this happen? Like, why wouldn't parents just be given a check to go wherever they think they should send their they want a French immersion school outside Philly? They can go there. And let me ask the question for everybody listening. I gave you these test scores. How could it be worse? Could it be worse? It couldn't be worse. It would have to be better.
I also want to get your take on the recent Supreme Court decision striking down affirmative action, which of course means that race can no longer be used as a factor in college admissions. What was your reaction to
It was good. I didn't think I didn't agree with affirmative action from day one when I was a kid, and I don't agree with it now. And I didn't think it was constitutional. So I'm happy that the constitutional process played out. I'm even happy about what happened with President Biden's student loan disaster that started under President Trump, which is a whole nother topic, but I'm even happier about that.
Now, there's also been a lot of talk in the news lately about immigration. Governor Greg Abbott recently put up a little barrier on the Rio Grande River to try and deter migrants from crossing into Texas. Some of your opponents in the GOP field want to finish the construction of a wall at the southern border. Is that something you would support?
Yes.
Why do you support it? Are there any other additional immigration measures?
Well, one, we just need to understand that people who came here legally are going to have to go home. 2, we're going to have to
immediately. Do they need to go home, or the people here who are currently
illegally need to go home? I mean, listen, what do people not understand about the word illegal? When I say the word illegal, like someone illegally took a gun and shot somebody, needs to go to jail. People say, "Oh yeah." When I say, "Whoa," what I said, just said, "Go home." People were here illegally. You say, "Whoa." I'm like, I just said the word illegal. People here legally who are going through a legal process to come here, who have a green card, they can stay. I would put the best people that I know, my Harvard Business School classmates, in charge of one of these things to figure out how we can streamline getting green cards for people we want here. Now, unlike every single other candidate running for president, I don't know if that's true. Mr. Suarez may have done this, but I've actually not just been down to look at the border. I've been across the border to see the calamity that happens on the other side. And my heart breaks for the young ladies that tonight will be raped at the border, that I can do nothing about except pray. And that needs to stop. Now, one of the things that has to happen in our country is that we need to stop focusing so much on what's happening in the news with the Palestinians and focus maybe on what's happening south of our border. Pick up an article tomorrow in the New York Times or even the Fox News and tell me how many articles you find about the country of Colombia, or even where Ecuador is on the map. Obviously, it's at the equator, or any of these countries to our south that struggle. Wouldn't it be better than trading with China and letting them grow their military to have focused on trading and growing the countries to our south so that people in those countries really didn't need to leave? We should start that. We've never done anything about what I'm talking about, not even tried. And we should try because they're smart people.
Let's go into what you mentioned. Another essential component of your platform is trade. Now, last year, the trade deficit between the United States and China climbed to over $380 billion. It's my understanding that you want to stop trade with Beijing altogether,
I do.
which some say could skyrocket prices for consumers. So, how are you going to go about creating a system for Americans that keeps prices steady, even with those economic measures?
Well, one, that's a falsehood to say that. So again, you can't do it overnight. President Trump, I said correctly that he would win the election when he started talking about China, because well over 3, 4, and 5 million manufacturing jobs now are going to communist China, and it does nothing to help American citizens. It's destroyed people. If you don't believe me, at least watch the trailer for my movie Fixing America. It's a Fixing America movie. Watch the whole movie on Amazon if you want, but just watch the trailer and watch the towns and watch Youngstown, Ohio, and watch cities that you may not live in be destroyed. They were destroyed. The middle class was destroyed. People were put into poverty, and it needs to change. But this would happen over a number of years. Keep raising the tariffs, and people will have to leave. And by the way, Donald Trump put 10% tariffs on many of the goods and somehow exempted Apple Computer. No exemption for Apple Computer. By the way, just so people know what's going on in communist China and why I'm right about this, the State Department 2 weeks ago said that people should not travel to communist China. Why? Because Americans are being arrested and detained illegally for no reason at all, to paraphrase what it says. Go to the State Department and read it. Everything we say about communist China ends with the biggest non sequitur that I've ever seen in my life. Don't go there. But we have a $388 billion trade deficit with them, right? They stole the design for the new jet fighter. We're going to keep trading with them. They put Catholic priests and they disappear or in prison. We keep trading with them. They put 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. We do nothing about that. What's wrong with the American people and human rights? What's wrong with our leaders in human rights? So if indeed over a short period of time, some prices do go up, but jobs go up. Remember what happens. A manufacturing job that gets located in the United States of America is 4 jobs. Does everybody understand that? It's called the multiplier effect. When you open a plant somewhere in Dayton, Ohio again, and you employ 1,000 people, you just increased 4,000 jobs in the local or nearby American area. Remember, someone shows up to serve hamburgers at lunch. There are secretaries that do this. In a Ford plant, they have a ball bearing place nearby. I mean, I could go on all day about what happens, what you need when you hire manufacturing workers. There's no bigger effect on the economy than a manufacturing plant. They're generally the biggest taxpayers to local property taxes. So if the price of computers went up for a while before we started locating them here, by the way, they're not all going to be here. Some are going to be in Mexico. I believe in free trade with the UK. I believe in free trade with Australia. I believe in free trade with Canada. I would immediately have a UK free trade agreement if they would have one. They're our allies. So remember, if we don't have a fabricating plant big enough to rebuild the Golden Gate Bridge if it was attacked, and we don't, it has to come in from China. Everybody's seen this on the news, right? For years, we're not doing okay. If, however, with our trade allies, we have free trade agreements, and they have a specialized steel plant that we might not have. We all have a great steel plant for national defense purposes. So, but China is a totalitarian, communist, one-person rule country. So what's the argument on the other side? We don't care about the Uyghurs. We don't care about human rights. We want them to take their $380 billion a year profits, which about 20% goes to their bottom line, and that pays for nearly half of their of their defense budget that they're using with the express purpose, they say, to defeat America one day. Everybody's okay with that? Or you want to pay 25 cents more for X or $3 more for Y? I'll pay $3 more for Y in the near future.
Now, you mentioned the treatment of the Uyghur minority. If any country, not just China, were found to be in violation of human rights, would you take measures as president to punish them as well?
Yes. Now, remember, I said this, I wrote a paper on this when I had my own newspaper in college. America is the shining city on the hill. America has the right, not the duty, in every situation to go in and restore people's freedom. We have the right to do that because that's how we live. So it depends on the situation and depends on what we actually can do. But yes, I am maybe the only Republican candidate who's, well, Asa Hutchinson would agree with me on this, I think, but I believe really strongly in human rights.
There's been a lot of talk about whether the United States should be the world's police, should go into countries if, we deem it a national security threat, should sanction countries if they're found to be in violation of human rights. What's your take on that statement? Should the United States be the world's police?
Well, we don't need to be the world's police. We need to be the world's superpower. So we don't have to police everything. Sometimes our allies can do that. Sometimes we help allies. But if anybody thinks that we should give up, like some people do, like Ron DeSantis does, like Mr. Ramaswamy does, like many people down the Republican Party do, that we should be an isolationist country with a Coast Guard, then I got a different story for the people 20 years from now. China and Russia will control things, and the US dollar will fall apart. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency for a number of reasons. A gigantic bond market that everybody in the world can buy and sell into, creates lots of money, sometimes badly, that people need to liquidate and do trades in, has the biggest and strongest military in the world, and a rule of law that's better than anybody else's. Without those things, you will find it all, everybody listening to the show, extraordinarily more difficult to live. And you will wish for the day that we were still the world superpower. I am a Ronald Reagan 700 ship Navy defense type of guy. So make no mistake where I'm coming from. I don't apologize for it. I'm not a Coast Guard dude. I love the Coast Guard, don't get me wrong. But I'm not someone who says we should be isolationist. And I think that, by the way, before you ask, Ukraine is strategically of vital interest to the United States of America.
President Biden has provided, under his administration, over $45 billion in military aid to Ukraine. You say it's a national security vital interest. Would you continue supporting them throughout this conflict?
Yes, and I would do much more than what they've done so far.
Give them much more.
Well, you don't have to give them much more in a sense, but we need to make sure that they win. Winning for people who, again, if Mr. Ramaswamy wants to say this again, or DeSantis wants to call it a territorial dispute, they can, and maybe they win, right? I don't know, but it's clearly not. Anybody who has any understanding of Russian history would understand that whether it's Ivan the Terrible, Catherine the Great, look up Potemkin villages, whether it's Stalin, anybody, they all realize that they have to push toward Europe. So when wars come toward them across a very flat piece of land, they have to have time for winter to come. They all think this. Putin's no different. So the war will never end. Russia will always try to do this. But if they take Ukraine, it is my belief that we are much more likely to have a nuclear exchange when they try to take Poland.
Would you support sending troops into Ukraine?
No, I don't think we need to send our troops into Ukraine. Again, in running for president, everything would have to depend on what information you get when you are president. But right now, I don't think we need to do that. But think about it, one other thing. We're basically sending used stuff for the most part that we're not going to use against China. Now, we have an ammunition problem, don't get me wrong. But we're sending old stuff to them and they're winning. So what's really happening? Russia was thought to be a world superpower. They are now officially a North Korea with a lot more land. And look what's happening within NATO. Germany reawakened, finally. Now, Donald Trump did some really good things and said some good things about people spending more on NATO, other countries, not just us. He was really good about saying it. He didn't do anything about it, but at least they started to go that way. But Russia has created its own giant problem. The reawakening, France, Germany, Netherlands, and so forth, that I think will continue for the next 20, 30 years.
Now, broadly speaking, as commander in chief, you mentioned you don't want to put troops in Ukraine. What would be your overall philosophy for putting troops into a foreign nation?
Well, it would have to be something that we would use overwhelming military forces to win quickly, if that could be possible. But it would also have to be, every situation is totally different. I mean, look at the mistakes we've made throughout history ourselves, whether it's Korea, I mean, we could go on all day about this stuff. So these are the kind of things that would depend on the situation and depend on the information you have and depend upon what you ultimately thought would be the outcome. And no one knows that till they're president. They really don't.
Now, you mentioned North Korea, and of course North Korea has been in the news. U.S. Private Travis King was recently detained there after crossing the DMZ. Now, the United States says they are communicating with Pyongyang. What's your reaction to the news?
Who would be surprised? Why did the man cross the DMZ? I don't have much more information than he crossed the DMZ. I don't know. But we do know that Bill Clinton promised that they wouldn't get nuclear weapons, and he lied. And we do know that Donald Trump met with him a couple of times and even walked across the DMZ line to shake hands. And we knew that was a complete fiasco. We have to understand that communist dictators, whether it's Xi in communist China or anyone around the world, Putin himself, these dictator type people they're not city council members in New York City, Mr. President Trump. They don't react to you kind of getting it and thinking you can kind of like get them to change their mind. They're dictators, they're communists. They have to be dealt with in a certain way. And North Korea is one of the worst situations of famine. I mean, imagine being caught with a Bible in North Korea and your whole family being killed. And right now, probably a mother is being forced to drown her baby because she was caught with a Bible. This is what happens in North Korea. Again, we're not sending troops to North Korea, but we have to understand what's really going on in these countries and call it out all the time. That's part of being president and part of being an elected official.
Do you feel that calling it out will bolster cooperation between the two countries? Do you want to cooperate with countries you see as an adversary?
Well, no, I don't want to cooperate with North Korea. We want to defeat eventually North Korea without firing any bullets. We want that guy to go, and we want North Korea and South Korea to be unified. Like it was never thought, by the way, when I was a kid, that East Germany and West Germany would ever unify. No one thought that was possible. Eventually, I think it'll happen with North and South Korea, So, but I don't know. But what I do want to do is bolster, so we don't have these wars, our relationships with Australia and India and Japan. By the way, Japan's figured it out. Japan's got a very powerful armed forces. They just don't tell people that much about it, but they're going to build that up, and we've got to encourage them. So, and again, things like we're only building one new Virginia attack submarine a year or so. We need to build 3. These things have to happen.
We mentioned foreign policy. One final domestic policy point I want to touch on is the national debt, which of course has been in the news a lot following the debt ceiling deal. The national debt has climbed to over $32.5 trillion. What would be your administration's approach to the national debt?
Well, we would certainly fix Social Security. We would then go after healthcare costs, and this would save a lot of money. But you ask another sort of direct question. People can go watch me take $700 billion out of the budget back when that was balancing the budget in 2011. I think we need to look at what actually works. And I'll give you what works. The Swiss 20 years ago, you could look up Swiss debt break. Sorry for my accent, DEBT, debt break. And what they thought when they had 24% public debt to GDP, that they put in a law that says that the debt could not grow faster over a business cycle, and the budget had to be balanced over a business cycle. They couldn't grow it faster than the economy grew. 20 years later, the debt to GDP in Switzerland is 24%, roughly speaking. That worked. We should do that in America. And we should do it for the first 10, 20 years, what's a little bit more stringent, where we take this debt to per capita, debt to GDP, we take it down, and it needs to get down below 70% before we even talking about, having a real country again. Because for people to understand this, We now are at the point where if we don't do things like this quickly, we can never get back to normal in America. I made a movie and correctly said, I think, that when we got past $20 trillion of public borrowing, which we're at 24 roughly today, 25 trillion, that rates couldn't get back to where they need to be. Normal borrowing costs for America are 6% over the last 35 years. They kept them at zero so long, and they borrowed short so long that we can't really get back. Because if the rates went to 6% and you're borrowing 24, we're well over $1 trillion in interest costs. That's going up from $250 billion, $330 billion. This year it'll be $700 billion. How do we get to $1.3 trillion, an extra $600 billion, without having some kind of major disaster in our country? I don't think there's a way. That's why I want to be president, because I think ultimately a financial expert like myself is someone who can handle this rather than lawyers.
Would you support, as president, cutting taxes in any way? Of course, a lot of the individuals on the GOP side want to cut taxes. President Trump cut taxes in 2017, although some will say that benefited more the upper class rather than the middle class. Do you want to in any way?
Well, the Trump tax cuts I was against. I want the 999 plan. Go look at my website. If you remember Herman Cain, the 999 plan was widely popular. It still is. It takes away the IRS. It actually captures a lot more money from people. How do I say this? We're not exactly Venezuela, folks, but I would guess, and I don't know, that about 15 to 20% of our economy is underground. But those people buy boats and they buy bubble gum and illegal aliens in our country till they go home. They buy stuff and we don't capture any of it. So we need a 9% income tax. We can make it progressive. We can give people, real poor people, helps them get out of poverty to at 9% rather than 50%, as I said earlier. A 9% corporate tax, and we need a 9% sales tax. These things, by the way, the sales tax is somewhat of a wealth tax. So if you're a liberal listening to this, you should like it. Guy buys $100 million boat today. We're going to take an extra $9 million from him or her. So we need to get a new tax plan because the one we have benefits the rich, especially when it comes to, say, electric cars. How do the middle class people under the Trump tax cuts, how do any of them pay over $7,500 in federal taxes so they can take full advantage of buying an expensive electric car? Not that they should, but remember, the electric car industry was set up for rich people, not for middle class people. But the tax credits go to wealthy. We could go on about this all day long. We could go on it for 7 hours. We don't have time. We need a tax system that's fair, slightly progressive, and captures all the money we can because we're missing money, a lot of money.
Now, let's talk about next steps for you. Of course, the big thing coming up is the GOP debate, and the RNC has set requirements. You have not shown up on many polls, none I've seen personally, and the last races you ran in for Senate in Rhode Island in 2006 and for Colorado's 4th District in 2014, you fell short of winning. So what would you say to voters who are concerned that you won't get that national profile, that you won't be able to win this nomination? What would you do to convince them?
Well, I believe that my time is coming, and I'd rather be me than Ron DeSantis. And people say, is this guy just talking his own game? No, Ron DeSantis blew it. By the way, Jeb Bush blew it, and Governor Walker, unfortunately, he would have been a good president, blew it at the beginning. They were people leading in the polls, or Trump was leading, but these people are, and they've come down. Think about the fact, if I were a 2-term governor of South Carolina, a former ambassador to the United Nations, known by everybody, if I was at 4%, I'd get out of the race. Look at Chris Christie. Everybody knows the guy. Terrible governor, by the way, didn't fund the pension plan. 2%. I'd rather be where I am now, like Herman Cain was 12 years ago today, at 0. I mean, effectively at 0, because I'm making headway. I've been on ABC Newsmax. I mean, I'm starting to really make headway, but I'm like a small growth stock, and you need to be concerned where I'm going to be in 3 months, because I believe that people are going to say to themselves, wait a second, I thought DeSantis was going to take down Trump. Nope. I said no. I thought Christie, wow, he was going to really attack Trump. 2% going nowhere. I go, by the way, Mr. Ramaswamy going nowhere. I mean, now he's spending all his own money. He can go to 8%. He can go to 10.
They are rising a bit in the polls.
Well, only Ramaswamy is rising in the polls. Every other person is going down. I mean, Asa Hutchinson's at 0 today in the morning consult. The ceremony mayor of Miami, 0. These people are at 0, and they've been around for a long time. They don't have the qualifications to be a good president. They've just been well-known people, but they're at 0. So you look out 3 months when people at the major news networks have to say, who could take down Trump? You know, that guy Laffey, Harvard Business School, has real issues. And by the way, someone at NBC is going to say, and he told me that he designed these issues to take down Donald Trump. He designed those 5 issues as the 5 issues that Donald Trump can't compete with him on. And they're on his website. Wouldn't we use him? He left office rather popular. That's my bet. By the way, it may not be the right bet, but at 61, if I can at least move the needle so people start doing some of this stuff, so you, Michael, and people your age have a country in 3 years, that's why I'm doing it. I'm only doing it because it has to be done. The things I've just said to everybody, people listening are probably saying, yeah, we got to do that. Yeah, we got to do that. Yeah, no one else has said that. Well, get off your butt and help, because I can't do this myself. People are going to have to rise up and say, yeah, we're going to help that guy. And you know what? People are starting to.
What would be your final message to voters ahead of the primary?
I am running to bring back the middle class, and I'm the only candidate with policies to do it, and the only one with the capability, by the way, to do it. But by the way, if you're still looking for the celebrity show, you don't want any part of me. If you just want to fight and argue with Democrats, remember, we didn't even talk about that today. Michael, have on somebody else and they'll tell you what a Marxist somebody in the Democratic Party is, or how bad Biden is. We're going to fix this country or we're going to lose it. And the only person with the capability or the ambition to fix it for the middle class, there's only one candidate, and that would be me.
Republican candidate for President of the United States, Mayor Steve Laffey. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Thank you so much for your time.
Michael, God bless. Keep going. Keep working hard.